Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome back. I'm Fuzz, and today I've got a top 10 list of my favorite Gene Hackman movies on physical media. Of course, we just lost Gene Hackman not too long ago, and so this is my way of kind of paying tribute to this legendary actor. Gene has always been one of my personal favorite actors, and I just feel like he had this one-of-a-kind screen presence that was unique to him. And there really was no one else like him out there in the acting landscape. He could pull off just about any role, right? I mean, he was a very diverse actor just in terms of his range. He was equally comfortable playing both good guys and villains in many different genres of films, whether they be dramas or thrillers or comedies or action suspense films, sports movies, westerns, slice of life type movies, whether it be in a lead role or as part of an ensemble cast. Gene Hackman could seemingly do it all. And he did it very convincingly too. I mean, he could create very different and distinct character portrayals while still infusing his own unique screen presence into the role at the same time. He was just a very gifted actor. Right? And personally, I think he was one of the greatest actors of our time, one of the greatest actors of his time. Yeah, Gene was the man. I've always been pretty blown away by the depth and diverse range of films that Gene Hackman has done. He did a lot of movies where he didn't necessarily have the lead role, but he still had a prominent role or shared screen time with one or two other major actors. In fact, he did a lot of that kind of stuff. Movies that were almost more of like an ensemble cast kind of situation where he's not like the top star of the film, but one of two or three fairly well-known actors that are all working together and playing off of each other in the film. So for my list here today, I didn't want to focus only on films where Gene was in a lead role, right? Because that would leave out a lot of great films. So instead, I focused on just ranking my personal favorite movies that Gene Hackman appeared in. And they're ranked in order of how much I like the films overall. But certainly Gene's presence in those movies is a huge part of why I like those movies. Now, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up here, kind of a bit of a warning, because there are a couple of high-profile entries in Gene Hackman's catalog that are either not going to appear on this list or they're not going to rank as high as some people were probably expecting. Remember, this is just my personal opinion here, right? This ranking really is more a measure of my own personal attachment to these movies than it is any kind of an attempt to try and create an objective list, which I don't even believe is possible when you're dealing with movies, right? We're talking about a subjective art form here. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a heads up in case some of you may need to adjust your expectations accordingly going into this top 10 list. Just try not to wig out if you don't see your favorite Hackman film on my list or if it doesn't appear as high on my list as you think it should. All right, so without any further ado, let's get right into this and rock it. All right, so starting off at number 10 here, we've got a great little crime drama, kind of like a political crime drama, political thriller here, starring Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman, Absolute Power from 1997. This is a great film. And, it is directed by Clint Eastwood. And of course, Clint has like the lead role. But this film really is kind of more like an ensemble type cast. I mean, Clint does have a pretty clearly defined lead in this, but there's some other great people in this as well. Besides just Clint and Gene Hackman, you got Ed Harris in this. You've got Scott Glenn in this. You've got Laura Linney in this. So it's just a really good cast and a really good film. And I just rewatched this the other night and I hadn't seen it in quite a few years. But I used to watch this film all the time in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I do feel like it has quite a bit of rewatch value to it. So yeah, excellent film with Gene Hackman. And Gene Hackman's performance in this is just awesome. He actually has pretty limited screen time. I don't think he actually has that much screen time, but it feels like he has more screen time than he actually does, because his actions are so essential to establishing the plot of the film and the premise of the film early on. So he plays a really important character in this movie, even though his screen time is a bit more limited than some of the other entries on this list. Anyway, this is a fantastic film, so if you've never seen Absolute Power, this is one I would definitely recommend. So yeah, Absolute Power for my number 10. Next up for my number 9, we've got one of those titles here that I think a lot of people would rank a little higher on their lists, but for me, it just comes in at number 9. Number 9 sounds about right. The French Connection. And you know, I may as well go ahead and lump The French Connection 2 in with this entry, even though the first one is the better movie. But yeah, I mean, I like The French Connection. It's on my top 10 list, but I don't rate it quite as high as maybe other people would. But it's a great film, directed by the great William Friedkin. I believe Gene Hackman even won the Academy Award for this film, Best Actor, right? And in fact, didn't this win Best Picture that year too? I think this might have won Best Picture that year as well, or at least was nominated. But awesome film, really an absolute classic. It's just, I don't like it as much as other Gene Hackman movies, but I still really like the film. And, you know, I've become a pretty big fan of William Friedkin over the last couple years. So I definitely dig this one, maybe just not as much as other Hackman fans out there do. But it's an excellent film with some classic, iconic moments in film history, especially that car chase scene later on in the film. Yeah, just awesome stuff. So we have to recognize it for the classic that it is. So yeah, for my number 9, awesome film, The French Connection. Moving right along to my number 8, another film here that some people are probably going to feel like it should be higher on the list, but for me, it's not. But I still love the film. It's a great film. I'm talking about The Conversation, and I've got the 4K Steelbook here from Lionsgate. I'll show off the Steelbook real quick there. Although I'm not going to say too much about this particular release today. This is from my my box set here. And I just did a recent video about that not too long ago. A few videos back, I talked about, I showed off all the contents of the box set, The Conversation, along with the recent Den of Thieves 1 and 2 box set. So if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on this release, make sure you check out that video. It's I don't know, a few videos back in my timeline. And because I did that video, I'm not going to say a whole lot right now other than this is just a great film and an awesome, I think it's fair to say it's a really good character study. And Gene Hackman's performance in this is a tour de force. He is just amazing in this film. There's some really good subtext and kind of underlying themes that really stick with you with this movie long after the movie has ended, right? And that's what I like about it. It really gives you some stuff to think about and chew on. And yeah, excellent film about a surveillance expert who you know, here's some stuff that he finds concerning, and I'll just leave it at that. If you've never seen this film, I don't want to spoil anything. So yeah, great film. The Conversation for my number 8. All right, next up for my number 7 here is a movie I just watched last week, and I loved it and had to put it on this list. I got the new Criterion 4K release of Night Moves with Gene Hackman's in this with Melanie Griffith and James Woods. James Woods is awesome in this, and there's some other people in there as well. But I mean, it's mainly a Gene Hackman like vehicle, right? And it's awesome, and I liked it even more than The Conversation. I thought it was a really well done neo-noir type film, and I think that's a fair characterization. It's kind of a neo-noir, kind of a bit of a mystery. It's good stuff, really good stuff, and it's like The Conversation, it's also kind of a character study. And there's a lot of really cool underlying stuff in this film. And I don't want to say too much about it for those of you who've never seen it. But yeah, it's just a great film. Really well done with a great twist as well. You definitely can't go wrong with a movie like this. So if you have never seen Night Moves, I would highly recommend it. And, you know, I thought the Criterion 4K was solid. I've never seen the movie before, so I don't have anything else to compare it to. But I thought the 4K looked all right. I mean, it maybe wasn't the most impressive 4K I've ever seen, but I didn't have any complaints about it. It was an enjoyable movie, and there was nothing bad about the restoration or anything. So I thought it looked good. But really, it's about the movie, and this was a great movie. I really enjoyed this one. So yeah, for my number 7, Night Moves. Okay, and for my number 6, we have one of the rare sports movies in my collection. I am not a very big fan of sports at all, but there are a few movies out there that I absolutely can handle, and this is one of them. I think this is one of the greatest sports movies ever made. You know, it's certainly, if it was enough to catch my interest, not being a sports fan, then it's got to be decent, right? I'm talking about Hoosiers. You know it, you love it. I mean, this is absolutely classic stuff. And yeah, Gene's performance in this is awesome. He plays the high school basketball coach in Indiana, early 50s. It's kind of a little bit of an inspirational coach type movie, right? But I mean, there's more to it than just that. That kind of boils it down and oversimplifies it, because the coach in this movie, he encounters a lot of challenges, trying to do his job. So, and that is a really good part of the story, a really interesting part of the story, all the challenges that he encounters and the way he is received in this small town. But yeah, I would highly recommend this one if you're a fan of sports movies and you've never seen this. You definitely have to get this one. I mean, this is like a must own for sports fans, right? And I don't know, there's maybe a handful of movies, of sports movies that I can handle watching, and this one is definitely one of them. I just rewatched it the other night. I actually hadn't seen it in probably 20 years. It had been a long time, maybe even longer, maybe 25 years. It had been a long time since I watched this, but I had a lot of fun revisiting this. I had to get this for my collection. Just bought it too. I'd never even owned it up until a few days ago. But I knew that if I was going to do a Gene Hackman video, that I had to include Hoosiers on that list. And that if I was going to include Hoosiers, then I needed to own it in my collection. I mean, Gene Hackman's performance in this film is excellent. And I think it's one of his better roles, right? One of his better performances of his entire career as an actor. He is awesome in this movie. But this is a movie I've always really liked, going back 30, 35 years. So yeah, for my number 6, I highly recommend this if you've never seen this one. My number 6 is Hoosiers. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, do me a favor and please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do, don't forget to activate that notification bell as well so you can be alerted when I'm posting videos that you might be interested in. Also, don't forget to like the video as well. It really does help with the algorithm on YouTube and the channel's visibility. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Moving on to my number 5, an awesome thriller here, directed by the great Peter Hyams. I'm talking about Narrow Margin from 1990. Yeah, great little thriller here. Essentially, Ann Archer's character witnesses something bad go down, and she ends up having to go on the run, and Gene Hackman's taking care of her and trying to keep her protected. So, and I don't want to say much more than that because I don't want to give away too much of the story, but it is a really good film, and this is a great looking 4K from Kino Lorber as well. Really crisp looking image. Yeah, a really fun film and a really suspenseful film as well. So if you've never seen Narrow Margin, this is one I would also recommend. And it's a great performance from Gene Hackman in this, as you would always expect from Gene, right? So yeah, for my number 5, Narrow Margin. Moving right along to my number 4, we've got a film here. I feel like I talked about this pretty recently. It might have been in my comfort movies video, because this is most definitely a comfort movie for me. I'm talking about the movie Heist from, what year did this come out? 2001. And another one I just rewatched the other night. All of these I went back and kind of rewatched before I did this. For Gene, I wanted to have most of these like fresh in my mind before I did this video. So this one I never get tired of rewatching. I love heist movies, as I've said before on the channel. Huge fan of heist flicks, and this is one that I take great comfort in watching for some reason. I love Gene in this movie. He's a badass in this movie. And so the heist in question here, they're after gold in this movie. So, and Gene Hackman, his character has a particular love of gold in this movie. It's got a pretty solid cast as well. Besides Gene, you got Danny DeVito in this. You got Delroy Lindo. And you got Sam Rockwell in this. So yeah, pretty solid cast, but just a great little heist story, and with some fun little twists and turns. So I love returning to this one every time. So yeah, for my number 4, Heist. All right, for my number 3, we got a big nostalgia factor here for me. I'm talking about from 1978, Superman the movie. Of course, Gene Hackman's iconic portrayal as Lex Luthor, and to this day, still the best person who has ever portrayed Lex Luthor on screen. Certainly better than Kevin Spacey and who's the other guy's name? Oh yeah, Jesse Eisenturd. Yeah, he sucked. I don't know what the hell Zack Snyder was thinking, but you can't put someone like Jesse Eisenturd in the role of Lex Luthor after someone like Gene Hackman has portrayed him the way that he has. So yeah, this was really my first exposure to Gene Hackman when I was a kid, right, in the theater in 1978, and it certainly made an impression. The bad Lex Luthor, as he drapes that necklace of kryptonite around Superman, and he collapses into the pool and everything. Yeah, that made an impact on me and stuck with me for many years. And then in the 90s, I really became a huge fan of Gene Hackman, and it was at that point, after seeing a number of his films from the 90s, that I realized, yeah, this guy is definitely one of my favorite actors. So now for this entry, Superman the movie, but I gotta say, Superman 2, I'm going to include that in with this entry because these two kind of go together as far as I'm concerned. And I love Gene negotiating with Zod and his crew in Superman 2. That's classic stuff, right? So love Gene as Lex Luthor. And yeah, what else can I say about it? Just classic, iconic stuff. So yeah, for my number 3, Superman the movie, with Superman 2 thrown in there as well. All right, next up for my number 2. This one's a pretty big one because this is the film that made me realize that Gene Hackman was one of my favorite actors, right? And I'm talking about Tony Scott's Enemy of the State. What an amazing cast for this film, too. I mean, this was, I think you can make the case this is more of an ensemble type cast. I mean, there's a lot of people in this. I mean, Will Smith, Jon Voight, Tom Sizemore, Lisa Bonet, Jake Busey, Jack Black, Gabriel Byrne even makes a brief appearance in this. There's a ton of people in this. Jason Lee is in this. So a lot of people in this. And Gene Hackman's, his character doesn't come in until a little bit later on in the movie. But he's a total badass in this. I love his character. And I remember at the time, the first time I saw this movie, I was like, wow, Gene Hackman was awesome in this. And at that point, I was like, I think this guy might be one of my favorite actors because he's, I think I had seen Crimson Tide a few years prior to that. And so I had that fresh in my mind. So then when I saw this and saw him playing Brill in this movie, I loved the character of Brill. So yeah, this is a big one for me. For my number 2, Enemy of the State. Okay, and then for my number 1, I just mentioned it a moment ago, Crimson Tide. I mean, you had to know my 2 favorite Gene Hackman films were also going to be Tony Scott films, because not only am I a big Gene Hackman fan, but I am also a huge fan of Tony Scott as well. And I think this is a really defining performance for Gene Hackman's career. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's one of his best performances. He was so intense in this movie, and the way him and Denzel, the friction between their 2 characters and the way they interact with each other and play off of each other is awesome. This is such a compelling film. Just so well done. I've talked about it quite a bit on the channel before. We're getting it on 4K too. That's news that just broke recently, in the last week or so. I think it was James over at In Search of Physical Media broke that news that we're getting this on 4K. So I am really excited about that. Can't wait for this to come out on 4K. We need more more Tony Scott films on 4K. Get them all released on 4K would be my preference. But at the very least, this was a big one. And to find out that this one was coming to 4K, I can't wait. I can only imagine how incredible this is going to look with all the cool, the bold primary colors that they use in this, the inside of the sub, the lighting and stuff, all the reds and greens and whatnot. I mean, it's going to look amazing in 4K. So I can't wait. So yeah, I mean, just a classic performance in my mind. Stunning performance from both Denzel and Gene Hackman. Denzel being, Denzel is actually my favorite actor, or at least he's up at the top. Gene is maybe just below that, but I mean, Gene and Denzel, they're both, like, I consider them both all-time favorite actors. So to have both of them together in this movie, yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, for my number one, Crimson Tide. All right, so that covers my top 10, but of course, as always, I also have a few honorable mentions I'd like to go over real quick here. Not going to spend too much time on these, but this is a movie I'd never seen up until last week, and I loved it. I thought it was really fun. Target, I bought this Kino Lorber Blu-ray, and yeah, this is a film that up until a few weeks ago, I don't even think I'd ever even heard of the film. So it was a fun little discovery. It's a neat little gem. Gene Hackman and Matt Dillon, they are father and son, and basically the mother takes a trip to Europe and she gets kidnapped. And so they got to figure out what the hell's going on, and they got to go over and like try and find her and, deal with this situation and find out why she got kidnapped and why she was targeted. So I thought this was a really fun thriller, and I had a lot of fun watching it. And if you've never seen it, this is one I would recommend checking out if you are a Gene Hackman fan. So yeah, Target. And then another one I thought was at least worth mentioning is The Firm, another ensemble cast kind of deal there with Tom Cruise. You got Gene Hackman in this, but you got a lot of other people in this as well. Hal Holbrook, Wilford Brimley. I think Ed Harris is in this, and some other people too that I'm forgetting. But great film, and Gene Hackman's character in this is about what you'd expect from Gene Hackman. So yeah, good stuff. The Firm. And then another film I wanted to mention that I just discovered just within the last couple months, or just saw for the first time within the last few months. I think I even talked about this in a collection update video, but The Package. This was a really good film. Gene Hackman, Tommy Lee Jones. And this is just a really good, kind of like an action thriller. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And there's some great supporting cast in here as well. Dennis Franz, Pam Grier is in this as well. So yeah, really good stuff. And I would recommend checking this one out. If you're a fan of Gene Hackman, but you've never seen this one, it's one I'd recommend checking out. It's directed by Andrew Davis, who also directed The Fugitive and Under Siege and Code of Silence, the Chuck Norris film. So, he's got some bona fides, he's got some credentials. So if this sounds like something you might be interested in, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Yeah, The Package. And then for my last honorable mention, believe it or not, I've got another sports movie here. I don't actually own this yet. I was thinking about picking this one up, and then I just didn't get around to it before doing this video, but it is a movie I like. And I'm talking about The Replacements, which came out in 2000. Gene Hackman is, he's basically playing a coach again, and it's a football movie. But it's kind of I don't know, it's kind of a lighter-hearted kind of football movie. It's not like some serious, hardcore, intense thing. But it's Keanu Reeves, Gene Hackman, and, I think actually they worked really well together in this film. I thought they had some pretty decent chemistry between them in this film. And I think it was that chemistry between them and the story in general that made me more receptive to watching a film that I normally wouldn't be into, right? Again, sports movies. I don't like sports movies, so it's kind of odd that two of them would show up in a Gene Hackman video, but I happen to like The Replacements. I think it's a lot of fun and it's really entertaining. And the funny thing is, out of all the sports out there, football is the sport I tend to hate the most, right? So the fact that I was able to get so much enjoyment out of a movie like this, despite it, the premise of the story centering around a sport that I really don't like, yeah, I think that should say something about the quality of the movie. I think it's a lot of fun, and Gene was awesome in it. Keanu was awesome in it. So I thought it was a fun movie, and I'm looking forward to revisiting it at some point and adding it to my collection. Even though I didn't quite get around to adding it this time, it is one I will be picking up on Blu-ray at some point in the near future. So yeah, for my final honorable mention, The Replacements. Now, before I wrap this video up, I feel like I need to address what could be an elephant in the room for some people, and that is the fact that I did not include any mention of the movie Unforgiven. Well, there is a reason for that. I have never seen Unforgiven, and I know a lot of people are going to be tripping out over that, but believe it or not, I have never seen Unforgiven, and so of course I didn't want to include it on this list, having never seen it. And I thought about maybe watching it, but the reason I'd never seen it is because I tend not to be a very big fan of Westerns in general. And that's because I'm not a big fan of period films, right? And I consider stuff that, like films that took place in the Old West where they're, riding horseback and shit and horse-drawn carriages, I consider that to be kind of a period film, right? And so I've just never really been into those kind of movies. They're not my cup of tea. I'm sure Unforgiven is a really well-done film. I like Clint, I like Gene. One of these days, I'm sure I'll finally get around to watching it, but it's just never been a film that I was all that interested in checking out. And so I didn't. And so that's why it's not on the list, not because I think it's a bad film or that it wasn't good enough. It just didn't sound like it would be my cup of tea, and so I've never gotten around to checking it out. But I don't know, maybe I should, right? Maybe I should one of these days, and who knows, maybe I will. Maybe I'll change my tune on Westerns at some point, maybe, 5-10 years from now, I could feel differently about Westerns. Who knows? That kind of thing happens sometimes, where you start appreciating genres that you previously didn't. So I don't know. I don't see that happening, but it's always possible that it could. So I'm sure I'll eventually watch Unforgiven, but I just wasn't in the mood to watch it for this video, so I just didn't. Anyway, just wanted to address that because I'm sure some of you out there are probably wondering why Unforgiven wasn't anywhere on the list. So I felt I owed you at least a little bit of an explanation as to why that was. Okay, so that about wraps it up for my top 10 favorite Gene Hackman films. Let me know what you think of my list here in the comments below. I always love hearing feedback from you guys. And also, what do you think of the idea of me continuing to do these types of videos with other actors out there? Like some of my other favorite actors like Denzel Washington, or Lawrence Fishburne or James Woods. I had a lot of fun doing this video, so I thought it might be kind of fun to extend the same type of concept to other favorite actors of mine. So what do you guys think of that? Would you like to see more videos along these lines where I just pick a favorite actor of mine and I do a top 10 list of my favorite films from them? If that sounds like something you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below. Again, I always love hearing from you guys and chatting with you, so make sure you leave me some feedback below. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.